Welcome to the debate. Today, we're shifting our lens to Southeast Asia to look at a commodity that's often underestimated, but is absolutely critical to the global FMCG market: Vietnamese rice paper. You know, we often think of global trade in these huge terms: semiconductors, oil, cars. But in the culinary world, rice paper is, well, you could call it white gold. It's the backbone of a massive export industry.
Oh, it's a massive industry for sure. But let's be honest about what that really means. It is a logistical minefield.
And that is precisely the tension we're here to explore today. It brings us to our central question. When a global importer, say a distributor in Europe or a huge retail chain in North America, is sourcing rice paper from Vietnam, what is the primary driver of their success? Is it the strict technical superiority of the product itself, the texture, the hydration, the sort of food artistry?
Or is it the strategic robustness of the export partner? The logistics, the documentation, the ability to actually scale. It's the classic tension between what's on the chef's table and what's in the shipping container.
Exactly. And we're basing today's debate on sourcing models and data provided by Asia Grocery Company, also known as Asia Grocery Wholesale or AGW, and their flagship brand, Asiadeli. I'm arguing for the product perspective. I believe that, at the end of the day, the consumer eats the rice paper, not the shipping manifest. If that product fails on the plate, the whole supply chain is worthless.
And I'm taking the wholesale and export perspective. My view is that without export readiness, container optimization, and frankly, risk management, even the most perfect product is just a liability sitting in a warehouse in Ho Chi Minh City.
All right, let's dive in. I want to start by framing Vietnam for what it is: the world's rice bowl. In 2024 alone, Vietnam exported 9.04 million tons of rice. That's an 11% increase year over year. This isn't just farming, it's a cultural and industrial superpower. So when we talk about sourcing rice paper, we're not just buying some generic wrapper. We're tapping into this deep heritage. The specific regions in the Magan Delta, for instance, they provide a unique water pH and rice variety that you just can't replicate.
Okay, acknowledged. The volume is there, the geography is unique, but volume is just a statistic.
Volume provides the canvas, but the artistry paints the picture. My position is that for any buyer, the physical product is the only metric that ultimately matters to their customer. Take the Asiadeli approach, which they call food arts from rice. Now, that might sound like marketing fluff to you.
A little bit, yeah.
But to me, it represents a technical standard. You have to look at the specific product variants. You've got the standard 22-centimeter round wrapper, the traditional one you dip in water, but then you have the innovation, the super thin variant. A reliable supplier is defined by their ability to produce a wrapper that doesn't clump or crack and maintains a consistent 300-gram pack weight. If I'm a buyer, I'm vetting for the integrity of that rice starch. If the product fails, no amount of paperwork is going to save that contract.
I see why you prioritize that, I really do, but let me give you a different take. I come at this from the business of the business. My position is that finding a factory in Vietnam is easy. You can walk down the street in the Mekong Delta and find dozens of them. But finding a partner, that's the real challenge.
And you don't think quality makes for a partnership?
I think product quality is completely meaningless if the shipment gets stuck in customs because the nutritional analysis is wrong, or if lead times fluctuate wildly because the factory can't scale for a holiday rush. I'm looking at a company like Asia Grocery Company, AGW, not just as a maker, but as a bridge. We have to talk about the boring stuff that actually makes people money. Documentation, HACCP, ISO certifications, Incoterms, specifically FOB, and the ability to scale.
But if that scale just delivers a mediocre product?
True reliability isn't just about how the rice paper tastes. It's about mixed container capabilities. It's about financial security. If you can't optimize a container with mixed SKUs, you're just bleeding margin on ocean freight. So for me, the export strategy is the primary driver of success. You're buying a supply chain solution, not just a disk of starch.
That's an interesting way to frame it. Let's move into the core debate, and let's start with how we define quality. You seem to see it as a box-checking exercise for a customs form. I see it as sensory science.
I see it as standardization, but okay, walk me through your science.
All right. Look at the testing required for a brand like Asiadeli. We're talking about hydration performance.
Rice paper is essentially a hydrocolloid matrix. It's a balance of rice flour, tapioca starch, water, and salt. When you dip it, the starch granules absorb water. If that ratio is off, or if the drying process was rushed, the wrapper gets sticky. It clumps.
And clumping slows down the kitchen.
It destroys the kitchen's rhythm. If you're a restaurant serving hundreds of summer rolls, a clumping wrapper is a disaster. It tears, it wastes product, it frustrates the chef. We're talking about visual checks with calipers to measure thickness consistency to within 0.1 millimeters.
Okay, 0.1 millimeters is impressive, I'll admit. But does the end consumer truly notice a tenth of a millimeter?
The consumer notices the result. That thickness dictates the frying behavior. They test it at 350 degrees Fahrenheit to ensure crispiness without it getting oily. But here's the real kicker, the Asiadeli Super Thin variant. This is a product feature that fundamentally changes the kitchen's economics. It eliminates the dipping step entirely.
The no-dip solution.
Lettuce, the noodles, that can increase kitchen efficiency by up to 30%. That's not a shipping metric. That is a product innovation that sells itself.
I'm sorry, I just don't buy that any product sells itself in B2B trade. That 30% efficiency gain is a fantastic selling point, I'll grant you that. But consistency across 10, 20, 100 containers is what keeps the contract. You mentioned the caliper test. That's great. But you know what matters more to an importer? The documentation that proves that consistency to the authorities.
But the documentation is just a reflection of the product. It's the receipt, not the meal.
Not always. You can have a great product with terrible traceability. Quality control includes ingredient certifications, nutritional analysis. These are required for customs clearance in the EU or the US. Let's say your super thin wrapper arrives in Rotterdam. If you're missing one document about the rice origin, or if the allergen declaration is formatted incorrectly, that container just sits.
And while it sits, nobody eats.
And you pay. It accumulates demurrage charges, fees for the container sitting at the port, which can be hundreds, even thousands of dollars a day. A simple documentation error can wipe out the entire profit margin of a shipment in a matter of days.
That's a fair operational risk, but isn't that just basic competence?
Basic competence is not as common as you'd think in international trade. And think about distribution. Asiadeli is on platforms like Amazon. That proves distribution capability. That's a supply chain win, not just a culinary one. The super thin wrapper is great, but if AGW couldn't execute the trade mechanics, no chef would ever even see it.
I'm still not convinced because you're treating the product like a widget, completely separate from the logistics. But let's pivot to the source itself. There's this romance and a commercial value in what I call the factory myth.
The factory myth. That sounds a little ominous.
It's seductive. Buyers want to go direct to the source for that authenticity. Asiadeli's visual identity even leans into this. You see the rice fields, the harvest. I'd argue that connection to Vietnam's agricultural strength is a key vetting criterion. You want a supplier who is physically close to the harvest.
It's a compelling narrative. I agree. But have you ever actually tried to deal with a small, authentic factory directly? It can be a nightmare.
It cuts out the middleman. Usually means better pricing.
It usually introduces chaos. This is where I have to strongly rebut the idea of going direct. This is the whole point of the AGW solution. These small factories, they often lack export documentation. They might make beautiful rice paper, but can they accept a letter of credit? Do they understand Incoterms? Do they even have a bank account that can receive US dollars?
Well, surely they can learn. Everyone has to start somewhere.
An importer doesn't have time to be a teacher. They need a partner who already knows pallet configuration. They need FOB port options to manage their landed costs. If you buy X-Works from a small factory deep in the Mekong Delta, good luck getting it to the port of Ho Chi Minh City on time and on budget.
So you see the intermediary not as an added cost, but as a risk filter.
Exactly. An entity like Asia Grocery Company acts as that necessary filter. They manage the boring stuff like volume, commitments, and payment terms. They ensure the white gold doesn't turn into a financial black hole. When you work with AGW, you're not just buying rice paper, you're buying the assurance that it will actually leave the country legally and efficiently.
I see the logic there, valuing the bridge over the destination. But let's talk about commercial viability. Once that product lands, how does it actually perform? I'm focused on menu integration.
And I'm focused on inventory strategy.
Well, stick with me on the menu for a second. The supplier's value is in enabling a restaurant to list Goi Kwon with Asiadeli Rice Paper on their menu as a mark of quality. We're seeing this massive trend in health-conscious markets. Rice paper is low-calorie, it's gluten-free, it's a lifestyle product.
It is. I don't dispute the trend at all.
And then there's the cross-merchandising potential in retail. You place the rice paper next to the vermicelli, next to the phone noodles. You create a whole Vietnam section. The quality of that one product drives the size of the whole shopping basket.
That's true for the consumer, yes. But for the buyer, the wholesaler, the value isn't just the menu item. It's the mixed container service that a company like AGW offers. This is the critical piece you're missing.
Explain why that trumps product quality. Why is mixing items so important?
Cash flow and warehouse space. A 40-foot shipping container holds thousands of cartons. A single wholesaler might not want 40 feet of just rice paper. That's a massive amount of inventory to sit on. It ties up capital, it ties up space.
So they want variety to reduce risk.
They want variety to optimize shipping costs. If you ship a half-empty container, you're literally shipping air, which ruins your unit economics. But if you buy more stock than you can sell just to fill the box, you destroy your cash flow. AGW allows them to mix it all: rice paper, sauces, dried foods, coffee, all on one bill of lading.
Okay, that is undeniably efficient. It allows a distributor to test new products without a huge commitment.
It's survival. And regarding your super thin variant, you called it culinary art. I call it a B2B solution.
How so? You're stripping the romance out of it again.
I'm adding the profit back into it. It reduces labor costs. In a high-volume kitchen, eliminating that dipping step saves seconds per roll. Over thousands of rolls, that adds up to hours of labor. In a market where kitchen staff is expensive, FMCG buyers look at that as a business metric. It's not just about taste, it's about the P&L statement.
That is a cold way to look at it, but I can't deny the logic. If the product saves money on labor, it justifies a premium.
It's the reality of the trade. The innovation is valuable because it solves a business problem. If a product is beautiful but impossible to use at scale, it stays in a boutique. If it's scalable and efficient, it goes global.
We have covered a lot of ground here, from the thickness of the wrapper to the complexities of FOB shipping terms. Let's try to bring this to a conclusion.
Let's bring it home.
From my perspective, I still maintain that while logistics move the box, it's the food arts inside that keep the customer coming back. You can have perfect shipping documents, but if that hydration test fails, if the wrapper is brittle, the brand dies. The strict sensory vetting, that tear resistance, the innovation of the super thin wrapper is the ultimate tool for long-term success. The product has to honor the world's rice bowl. Without the art, the trade is hollow.
And I'll conclude by saying that in a global market, reliability is defined by the ability to execute the trade. Documentation, shipping flexibility, communication. These are the things that ensure the white gold actually arrives. The factor in myth is dangerous. You need a professional export partner. A great product you can't get delivered is no different from a product that doesn't exist. Without the trade, the art is invisible.
You know, I think we're actually finding a synthesis here. It's rare, but it's happening.
We are. It seems that for buyers looking to work with export-ready suppliers in Vietnam, you can't compromise on either. You need both.
Exactly. A company like Asia Grocery Company, AGW, seems to provide that reliable bridge. They have the Asiadeli product, which hits all my sensory and innovation markers, like the super thin wrapper. It satisfies the chef.
And they have the AGW wholesale infrastructure, which hits all my markers for risk management, mixed containers, and export documentation. It satisfies the CFO.
So the best sourcing strategy combines that culinary appreciation with the cold, hard efficiency of a professional export partner. You need the person who understands starch retrogradation and the person who understands customs demurrage.
Complexity requires multiple perspectives. You need the art and the audit, the flavor and the form.
Well said. We invite our listeners to form their own conclusions on what matters most in their supply chain. Is it the taste or the trade?
Probably both. For those ready to explore wholesale sourcing and mixed container options, you can visit egrocery.asia or contact them at contact@egrocery.asia.
Thank you for listening to the debate.
We'll see you next time.